So, wow, our first webinar. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. A very big warm welcome on this cold. It's very wet and windy here in Plymouth, so I hope that it's the weather's a little better where you are, even if it is very chilly. Um, so you're here because we're going to be sharing with you about personalized systems that can defeat overwhelm so that you can lead your mind and live your life. Um, if you'd like to put a hi in the comments and let us know where you're coming in from today, we'd love to hear from you.
Sorry, just technical.
That's okay. Great. Devon, Cornwall. Some technical. Okay. Hopefully that's all right. Okay. Yes. So thank you very much for doing that, popping where you've coming from. Uh, Plymouth. Nice. Birmingham. Brilliant. No, yes, I'll be up there in a week or so's time. Um, yes, so I'm Liz. I'm one half of Mind Mastery, and I have a background of development, mostly in the charitable sector for the past 20 years or so. And I have a real passion for helping people to help themselves, and that means overcoming some of the barriers that we put up that we don't always know exist. Ian.
My background was a first career in the police as a manager and generally dealing with hassle and difficult stuff. But I learned a lot from it. And then just before I left, I retrained as a psychotherapist. So I've been doing that for the last maybe 12 years now. And that's led me into developing a business around helping people understand the mind and my partnership with Liz in Mind Mastery as well. My passion is to make the mind much more simple, and I hope you'll gather that from what we talk about today.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So, what are we going to look at? Well, I'm imagining that you're here because you might have recognized yourself in some of the posts that we put out, or you're aware of the work we do. So, we're going to look at some of those sort of common mental loops that we find ourselves in, and under the headings of imposter syndrome, perfectionist, pleaser, and procrastinator. And then we're going to have a look at how the why is really the driver of your behavior. And Ian will talk more about that. And then we'll give you an overview of the mind mastery process and how it can move you from being stuck to being empowered. And then we'll share with you how you can stay in touch with what we're doing and find out about opportunities to continue to engage with us in the future. So let's jump right in. I encourage you to share anything you feel comfortable sharing as we go through the next few slides. So if there's something that resonates with you, please pop it in the chat so we can see what's coming up for you most. But one thing you'll notice is we have a headline like imposter syndrome, but underneath that, there are many different experiences of imposter syndrome, and people experience it very differently. So, if imposter syndrome is something maybe you've experienced, do you experience it in any of the ways that are listed on the current slide? And if so, you might just want to put a one, two, or three in the chat because they're quite lengthy. Or you might want to just um, give a shout out to the emotion that comes up for you, whether that's that feeling of not feeling worthy, or sort of the worry that you're going to be found out. Um, and noticing some of the differences in imposter syndrome that can happen for different people. Thank you. Okay, so let's move on to, yes, comparison. Comparison, yeah, it's a big one. Yes, yeah, being found out. So everybody's experiencing it differently. That's great to see. Um, So let's move into perfectionist. Anybody experiencing perfectionism and the different ways? Again, these are sort of three of the most common ways that people might experience perfectionism. Are you a perfectionist? Is this something that comes up
I
for
know
you?
there's a few in I know there's a few in this group.
And again, put a one, two, three if you've experienced perfectionism. Um, One thing to point out right now is the importance of the emotion that's associated with the experience, because that tells us a little bit more about that experience. Definitely, so very, very clear about how you're experiencing these. That's great. And again, lots of difference. Nobody's experiencing. Yes, different situations, different times, experiencing them in different ways. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much for sharing. So moving on, pleaser. This is quite common, especially amongst women. Um, Not all women, but a majority of women that I work with have a pleaser. And again, we all experience that very differently. And so again, if you experience this in any way, um, I have experienced number two myself quite a lot, and number three, I'll tell you a bit more about that a bit later. Great, thank you. Okay, so finally, moving on to Um, I like that, Helen. And finally, moving on to procrastination, being a procrastinator. Again, this is been another one for me, especially number two, um, avoidance as a means of procrastination. So if you identify with any of these and are happy to share one, two, or three in the comments or anything else. Yeah, putting things off, something better to do. Yeah, that's a common one for me too. And yeah, interesting to note that sometimes they show up differently in your professional life than in your personal life. Yes, yeah, it's of interest too. Thank you so much, everybody, for sharing those. So now that we've had a look at the ways in which we get stuck in these mental loops, as we call them. Ian's going to help he's going to demonstrate how this happens and what we can start doing to change our perspective and develop our understanding around this. So hopefully I'm going to get the tech right and you'll start to see Ian and not me in a moment. I think I wanted to there. So hopefully, Ian, when you speak, everyone will see you.
All right, good evening, everyone. Good evening. So you may well have seen this iceberg before in many other presentations, but the explanation I'll give is probably slightly different. And when you're going through difficulty and somebody asks you about it, we always talk about what happens, the drama. At the weekend, I was in London and I went to with some cousins a West Indian restaurant, very how can I say, entrepreneurial, because they had the typical West Indian, sorry, takeaway on one side, and then they'd got now a vegan takeaway on the other side. So they actually had two premises next door to each other. And somebody turned up at the premises really upset. And if you've ever heard a Jamaican really upset, and some of the words they use are swear words, it's quite alarming. So this quite alarming incident happened with this woman who I wasn't just wasn't expecting on a Saturday afternoon, and she was arguing with somebody in the other side of the restaurant. And we went into the vegan side, and this girl was very placid and said, and this is nothing against anybody who isn't a vegan or whatever, but she said very placidly, we often get these types of arguments in one side of the restaurant where the meat eaters are, but you never see them in the vegan side, which I thought was a very interesting comment. But this whole scene carried on, and in the end, her boyfriend had to get her in the car. And even as the car sped off, she was shouting back at the restaurant and swearing and really angry. The point I'm making is this: she was in her what, right? She was stuck in a response, an emotional response to a situation with no opportunity to think that she could have responded differently. And I'm not saying we all get involved in those type of situations, but it's typical for us to then report that the woman made me angry or she'd got the wrong order or something else, and not realizing that we have another opportunity to respond to difficult situations. So our work in Mind Mastery is helping you understand how you achieve the best and the most goal-related response through knowledge not of what is happening, but why you are responding in that way and how you can respond differently. And in order to understand the why, you have to understand what's going on in the subconscious. And a lot of people, well, probably more people now are open to that. But because you can't, it's something you can't see, people often think it's woo-woo or it doesn't really exist because, you can't see it. But there is something driving our thinking, and it is true that we're not taught at school about it. So we are often a victim of it until we seek the knowledge that allows us to understand it more effectively. There's many, many ways that are out there to help you understand behavior, when you're having counseling, seeing the psychiatrist, etc. But my view is that a lot of it is quite mysterious and you don't really get to understand your own personal response. And that's what we focus on. We help you understand how you personally respond to a situation by understanding the why you respond. So next one, please. So we do that through a process, first of all, of awareness. So we teach you things about emotion and the thinking that's generated when you see the theme in a particular situation. And we teach you how different people respond to different situations. So when we've highlighted these different categories, the procrastinator, the pleaser, etc., etc., we know that behind those profiles there is a certain personality trait. And through knowledge of the way that personality trait works, or a combination of personality traits, we're able to predict the way people respond. It's almost like your gift is your personality trait, but in this world of duality, it doesn't always work for you in every situation. And but that doesn't mean that you have to struggle. It just means you have to learn to adapt. So that's where the second part of our work comes in, which is helping you adapt your behavior, learn to adapt your behavior so that it doesn't mean that you think situations are great, but you're able to negotiate them in a much more helpful way. Uh, Sometimes almost to the point where you're now indifferent about them. So, for instance, when I said about my pleasing, my pleasing thing meant that I was quite often worrying about whether people would disapprove of me. So if I was doing a talk like this, I'd be scanning everybody here and thinking and seeing if they've got a friendly face or blah blah blah, and that used to put me off what I was talking about. But if you see the way I speak now, you will notice that isn't my concern. My concern is to try and get the information over in the best way that we can. So that's the adaptation part, and then the third part is really Lizzie's strength, which is all about maintaining your gains. You want to speak about that, Liz?
Yes, thank you, Ian. So maintaining your gains or anticipation is looking at the ways that those very same habits are going to potentially come up. And I like to think of it as self-sabotaging. So as we embed new habits, I'll talk about neural pathways. The old habits are very strong neural pathways. I like to think of them as the difference between a motorway and a B road. So when you're building up those new habits and generating those new neural pathways, there's still the potential to go back into those old habits. So whether that's pleasing or procrastination, imposter syndrome. So we provide you with the tools that you need so that you can consider the situations and have the tools that if you feel like you're being self-sabotage, you're having a hijacking of your old behaviors, you are equipped to capture that and to consciously make that new choice that you would prefer to see in your life. So that's the process from that we provide you with. So you have all of the tools to implement your new knowledge and to continue doing that for life. And thank you. So
Next one.
back to Ian.
So when you come out of the what, that's at the top, and you move into understanding why you're responding, you then start to access other resources. And I've described them here as the ability to have an alternative perspective, the ability to develop mental flexibility and overcome rigidity, which means you don't get big feelings. Your feelings are much less. I know that sounds a bit strange, but as I said to you earlier, if I'd been talking on a webinar like this before it, I'd probably have very big feelings, which would put me off. But now I've learned to manage that because I think and believe first, and think differently about how I'm going about this exercise. So you then learn to access your resources because in the what, you don't know what your resources are. You don't really know what your toolbox is. And you also then increase your capacity because you experience less nervous system reaction and less chemistry as a result of it. So there's all these benefits that accrue from learning more about how the subconscious works and having a structure to understand it, but also understand that of those people that you're dealing with and interacting with and your other family members. So a very simple model that we use to help you understand the why you respond is this expectation alignment model, and it's something we use in business as well as we use personally. And if you start on the right, most of our knowledge of how we respond usually speaks about socialization and culture and chip off the old block, your parents, etc., etc. Our experience is, and what really makes our work effective is looking at, first of all, behavioral wiring. Now, for us, behavioral wiring is not something you get from your parents. That's the reason your brothers and sisters aren't all the same, right? It's nature. Um, and that's the biggest determinant of your response. And
Okay. Uh, I think Ian might be experiencing some difficulties with his network at the moment. Um, so I'll take over. Um, so Ian's talked about our uniqueness, our behavioral wiring, starting with ourselves. Um, and then we build on that. It's with the socialization. So how we show up is a mix of our own behavior, the way that we absorb the messages from our socialization, from our culture, and that does start in the family and goes into our schools and later into our workplaces. And of course, we have the media and ongoing socialization. But that early socialization is done without our conscious knowledge and our conscious ability to make choices. And that builds up our expectations. And there are some things that we have very fixed expectations around. And we go into our daily lives and we carry those expectations, and sometimes they're not met. And in the times that those expectations are very rigid, and they're not met, that leads to those very big feelings that Ian was talking about.
yeah,
Um, and so the emotion comes on. But if we go into a situation and the expectation is met, we're absolutely fine. And so we experience life with a mix of our expectations being met in some circumstances and not in others. And that's often why we think in the what rather than in the why.
yes.
You're back. Good
Yeah,
stuff.
sorry, yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
That's all
Somebody
right.
trying to sabotage me. No, no, that's great. So just to add to that, when you walk into the room, you're projecting the one, two, three of how you see. Okay, so some people will notice the room's untidy. Some people will notice there's no harmony in the room, or some people notice that the boss is there and move into imposter syndrome. That's because of how you're projecting the one, two, three of how you see. The biggest determinant is the first one, right? But then the second one, if you think that you're socialized to think that you're middle class or you're lower class or you're an immigrant, you hold on to the title immigrant and you move into certain circumstances, that socialization factor will affect you, and you will then find that your nervous system is activated. You see, so it's always to do with what you believe, projecting these expectations. So even when people talk about trauma, you will notice not everybody comes back to a situation with trauma, right? That's because it depends on the one, two, three of how they see. So it's learning more about that one, two, three, which again you can call the why you respond that way, um, allows you to develop adaptability, and it gives us a lot of opportunities to do more complex things with it. But that's really a very simple explanation. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you. I'm glad you're back. It's good to see you. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about emotions. And one of the common questions or statements that comes up, well, my negative emotions are important, and I need them. And yes, you do. But you don't need them from any length of time. As you can see in the picture, there's a hand over a hot stove. So in the same way that your body gives you a signal that you are experiencing pain, that in this instance, you need to remove your hand from the hot stove, or you will suffer some quite severe damage. Your negative emotions are also giving you information. And so for that moment that we first experience that negative emotion, that is really important because it is telling us something about the situation. The trouble is we are not always taught, as Ian has said, how to then recognize that emotion, what it's trying to tell us, and then see the other possibilities and opportunities that we have before us. And so we build up this this loop, this strategy, and we carry that through our lives. And that means that we then sort of see all of our situations through the blinkers of this strong emotion, and we're denied the options that otherwise are available to us and are available to us in situations where we're not in these strong emotions, because it's really important to remember that there are many times in our lives when we face challenges and difficulties, and we don't have these strong negative responses to them. We deal with them in ways that feel easy, like we're flowing through them or moving with the tides. So it's important to remember that you already do this in some situations, but we're talking about those times when those emotions are big, and that is a behavioral loop that we get stuck in.
Yes.
Do you want to add anything else, Ian?
And just to add that the emotion is only one part of a process. When if we had more time, we'd explain that we call it the beast. It's actually a number of things that happen with the emotion, and with the fact that you get discomfort means you're automatically subconsciously seeking comfort. So that comfort when you're in the emotion can be many, many things that you don't even realize you're doing. But you will notice, if I'm home in the evening and I'm alone, I'm likely to eat more. There's all sorts of things that generate because we're projecting these expectations that we don't really know we're projecting. If they're not met, we move into emotion. And also, because that's energetic, we move into compensatory behavior. So it's a lot more than just what we say. There's a lot of things that stem from that. Some of our illnesses, our sicknesses stem from that. Um, it's not just about stress. It's not just about stress. So when I deal with people, they come with all sorts of challenges, but they're often linked to their lack of knowledge of the why.
Thank you, Ian. And we have our own stories as well, where our overwhelm went unchecked, and Ian and I both have our own burnout stories. So we thought it'd be uh, important to share with you what we experience and also how this process has actually helped us on our journeys. So my story starts about 13, 14 years ago, and um, I was in a work, and I had very strong beliefs about how my boss should behave in the workplace. I also had very big pleaser tendencies. I was avoiding my work by doing everyone else's work for them and then getting frustrated and upset that I wasn't being able to do my work. There were aspects of my job I loved. I loved the traveling. I loved working with people. I loved my training and development work. But there were other aspects that I that didn't work for me. And over time, the gradually the stress levels increased and increased. And I only realized this recently, reading a post on LinkedIn, that I used to get debilitating muscle spasms, which meant I couldn't move my limbs. And I was reading about someone else having this because of their own burnout, because of their mental health. And I realized that that was the same. I'd been to the doctors and had lots of blood tests, and they couldn't find anything wrong with me. And then shortly after, I went off sick 3 months and had some counselling. I was able to go back to work after 3 months. Um, and I didn't have this process at that time in the way that Ian and I are able to teach it now. My awareness came by literally packing a bag and going away to Southeast Asia for 6 months and getting away from everything. And during that time, I was able to reflect without the day to day of work, family, and chores, household to look after. I could start to see and connect with some of the things that were going on for me. So when I returned, I was able to refocus my attention in light of the new knowledge I had about myself, that I gained about myself during this time away. So all of that awareness, the adaptation took a little bit longer because again, I didn't have the tools that we're able to equip people with. It took some time to develop that. Um, and then I had to learn the anticipation as well, and that's been my journey. So I've really been able to put all of that together in the last 2 or 3 years. So I consistently am able to show up, and the things that used to interfere with my happiness, my ability to deal with the challenges that life throws at me with grace, um, uh, have really only come together in the last few years. So it's been quite a long journey, but all of those components, that generating that awareness, that being able to adapt, but also then to anticipate and continually um, uh, include that adaptation in all aspects of my life has been quite a recent thing, and it's made things so much better for me. So that's my story. That's where I've come from, and that's why this is so important to me, to help other people be able to do this and not have to do this over 13 years, but maybe 13 weeks would be better. So I'm going to leave Ian to tell you his story.
Yeah, it's interesting how the mind and body connection is obvious to us, but it's not obvious to the medical people often. And so you'll go there with particular symptoms, but they're not really giving you the causes. They're just giving you the symptoms. They're just talking about or treating the symptoms. And my example was when I moved from policing in Staffordshire. I was a sergeant, so I was running a team, and then I moved on to the CID. I moved to a different force, Thames Valley, and I don't know if anybody's heard of Slough, but I was working in Slough. Totally different challenge, and so I'm sitting at my desk. And whereas before I'd been dealing with car crime and stuff like that in Staffordshire, now it was shootings every day and this sort of stuff. Not saying that people were getting shot, but there were shootings. And so I'm sitting at this desk, um, and everybody will tell you that what was the problem was the seriousness of the things I was dealing with. Um, but it wasn't anything to do with that. It was always after you'd made a decision, and I had quite a lot of experience, so I was happy with the decision making. It was always about what would the boss think about the way the decision you'd made. It was always this seeking approval problem. And the thing was, I didn't know that the word pleaser existed. I didn't know I was an amiable. I just thought that's just the way I thought. And most people don't realize this stuff. And then what happened was because I was, how can I say, I think Liz, you mentioned this earlier, because I always said, yes, I'll do it. And I was living a single man's life, so I didn't have to go home to go and look after kids or anything like that. So I could always be at work, and people get to rely on you, and he's a good old boy who will sort that out. They were then setting up one of the first public protection units. Um, and they asked me to go into that. And the idea was that we'd have detectives in there so that we could do something really constructive with the offenders, rather than just talk to the victims, really have something that was bold and different. And again, I didn't know I was a pleaser, so I went in there, and now I was now more in touch with the community, building links. And every time somebody came with a problem, I was automatically, as a pleaser, trying to sort it out, because pleasers like to bring solutions to other people. So that's when I actually started a relationship. And I remember my girlfriend then coming and asking me, Ian, why is your bedroom such a mess? And that's when I realized I was actually depressed, because I'd been going and going and going, and I wasn't really managing myself or my resources. And that was my burnout. But I then look back now, and I noticed that things that used to take me 5 minutes were taking me an hour and a half, because I just didn't have the clarity of mind to make decisions. And that's how much it can affect you. But once you understand more about yourself, you can learn to manage it. You don't have to respond to things in the way you automatically do. We call it your looping. You've probably heard me say that tonight. Your looping is the fact that you've got an automated response which is well used and very comfortable to do. But what is comfortable is not always best for you to do. And that's how you then move beyond your capacity and your resources, and then move into illness. And I would say it probably took me about 3 months. I went off for a little bit. I went on holiday. I came back, and it probably took me about 3 months to actually get back into the swing of things. And it wasn't until I started to change and say no sometimes and start to actively look after myself that I experienced a change in the symptoms I had. So my view is all of this stuff, if we could be a little bit more proactive with the knowledge, is avoidable. It's avoidable because it wasn't because I was a detective and dealing with difficult things. That difficult things were what we did, but it was because of my projection of my expectations into that environment, that projection of my specific expectations that was creating my problem.
Great.
Is there
Thank
a
you very
question there?
much. Question.
Okay, no. Okay.
Okay.
So when we're talking about you and this self-knowledge, that is what becomes your personal empowerment. There's a real emphasis on usually on how intelligent people are or what their capacity is for getting things done, but that's what you're good at, right? And that's driving your an element of your capacity, of your kind of positive capacity. The additional element is usually outside of your comfort zone. It doesn't mean that you can't access it, but it's not automated. But in accessing it, you then begin to access the other tools that bring you into your personal power, which is how I'm saying now I do this work and I do public speaking. Before I was uncomfortable with it. So I'd even say, well, I don't want to do it. I avoided getting promoted further so that I didn't do it. But now I do it because I've expanded my knowledge of self in order to develop my personal um, capacity, ability, my empowering myself. But what also happens when you do that is you enjoy better relationships, improved performance, and as we've explained, better well-being. So it's not just one thing that we're talking about. It's a lot more than that. And particularly when you're moving into positions of leadership, Georgina will know stuff about this. The more flexible you are, which is what this is really about. Personal empowerment is about increasing your mental flexibility, your mental agility. The more you have this mental agility, the better you deal with a broader range of situations in a better way. So you've probably heard us say this before, when you're given a name, you think that you are that name and you are the behaviors that go with that name. But what we're saying is you're more than your I. Your I includes these additional benefits or this additional capacity that remains for most of us untapped because we don't have the knowledge of how to access it.
Great. Thank you, Ian. So do you have any questions for us? We weren't sure whether we'd have time for questions, but we do. If you do have any questions, do have a question. We have a question, Ian. How did you break past comfortable behaviors and stop procrastination?
That came with understanding what was driving my behaviors. And as you begin to know more about the why, you'll understand through our system, you'll understand that we all have particular beliefs. Now, when I talk about beliefs, I don't talk about I don't necessarily mean religious or familial or whatever. I'm talking about whether you have absolute shoulds or preferences. That's how these things express themselves. You develop these absolute shoulds or you develop preferences. And these reflect your desires, right? So desire is the enemy of intention because intention, if they're aligned, that's fine. But quite often your desire is not aligned with the intention. So when you have comfortable behaviors, quite often they're not aligned with the intention, but you don't know that because you don't understand enough about how that all works because it's all hidden stuff. So for me, where I was comfortable, as I say, it was dealing with, I was very comfortable dealing with people. What I probably wasn't as comfortable with was dealing with conflict, which is typical of the amiable. So I had to learn more about, and also with the public speaking element, I had to learn more about my assumptions, my inferences about public speaking. And I realized that actually they weren't telling me the truth. So I was thinking that everybody was thinking that I don't know what I'm talking about, and that you know, I know for this wasn't mine, but I know it will be for some people that there's some bit of knowledge that you haven't got. So you don't notice what you've got. You think about what you may not have or what you may not have said, and then that becomes your focus. I've missed this, and everybody will know that I've missed this. Everybody didn't think that this speech was great. And it's these types of inferences. Remember, inferences may be true or may not, but in the moment you're convinced that they're true, but you don't know that you're convinced that they're true or they may not be true because your mind is so good at persuading you that the thoughts you have in that moment are absolutely true. So you actually have to learn to doubt your mind. Your mind is not the friend you think it is. You've probably heard that before, but it's true. And you have to realize what your mind is doing and actually what's happening. Um, the procrastination is, listen, I haven't completely overcome that. There's still sometimes the detail things are very difficult for me, but I know at the time, I know what my mind is telling me about doing the difficult things. It's usually telling me that do this instead or put it off to do that. But I know now my mind is telling me that, or even with my little cake problem, a few of you will know that I have. I know what my mind is telling me when I see that cake, so I'm I'm then starting to overcome that by telling myself, you don't have to have it here. Well, you don't have to do that. It's not. And as you start to use that dialogue to challenge what your mind is telling you, you start to indulge in more goal-related behavior.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that. Um, uh, yes, most of the time our mind is our worst enemy. And one of the ways that I've overcome that, particularly more recently, is having a few grounding exercises, which so I don't have to challenge what's in my mind. I just have to refocus away from the thoughts. Typically, it's to one of my senses. Maybe it's to really focusing on hearing something, maybe really focusing on seeing something, or connecting with my breathing. I particularly like to do that. It works well for me, but there are lots of different ways that you can achieve that. And when in doing so, you tend to find that the thought that was there that was convincing you that this was the right course of action to do, that comfortable familiar behavior, rather than doing the thing that needs to be done, it enables me to then just say, okay, right, we're just going to sit down and we're going to do the smallest action necessary to get this thing started. It's a bit like you quite often read about, someone who wants to take up running, particularly at this time of year, thinking of like New Year's resolutions, like what's the first thing you can do to support yourself so you'll actually go for that run? Well, you put out your running shoes somewhere where they're visible. So when your alarm goes off at 6:30, you see your running shoes, you're more likely to put your running shoes on than if they're still in the back of the cupboard. And so that's what that does mentally, is it switches, it gives you then that opportunity to then see those other possibilities. And so that's a tool that we now teach as part of mind mastery, to switch over.
Hmm.
Any other questions? Okay, can you see that, Ian? Quite often I'm limited in my own beliefs, especially when it comes to personal
Yeah.
development.
So when I spoke earlier about the one, two, three of how you see, and I spoke to you about the one being your behavioral wiring, the two being your socialization, um, you'll see that you can come to believe that there's certain things you can't do on the basis of that wiring and that socialization, when the reality is you could do them. But your habit of thinking about yourself means that you're living in this limitation of and this limited idea of you and your capacity. Now, when you ask other people about you, you'll probably find that they say, well, why haven't you done this? You seem to be much better at that than somebody else who has done it. But you still don't believe in what you can do. And the problem is that it's these rigid rules that limit you, and they don't, just as they've limited me, and they don't flexibly enough to allow you to step into your potential. So it's not just something you can do from reading a book, right? A lot of people think, well, I've read this book, I've read that book, but that's not always going to work for you if it's something as ingrained as that. Reading a book is intellectual understanding. To change your behavior in that way, you have to have what we call emotional insight. You have to understand how the emotion is working against you and how to defeat it. That's through the work of adaptation. It's not generally known by all of the stuff out there that's available, right? You can go to some counselors, they may not have that knowledge. They have to have knowledge of what is below, as we showed in that iceberg. And not many people really have that knowledge. I thought when I started this work that everybody had the same knowledge, but it doesn't work like that. You can go to some psychiatrists, some psychologists, they won't know. They'll talk to you about, you go to a session with them, they'll talk to you about things like so how you're feeling today, and everything's about your feeling and the situation, but they won't know how to actually help you adapt necessarily. They know how to talk about a particular situation. So you're learning more about the mysteries of why people suffer with these things. There's opportunities for people to definitely suffer less if they have more knowledge.
And thank you, Ian. We have another one here. Another question. What if you understand the emotion and why it's being felt, but you still push past it?
Well, the idea is that obviously that you do push past it. But what people don't know is what you tell yourself about the situation will exaggerate the emotion. In a situation, you can have a big emotion or you can have or a smaller emotion, and that depends on what you believe about the situation. If you go into a situation demanding that everybody approves of you and everybody thinks that what you've just said is perfect, right? Then that is what signals the body to respond in the exaggerated way. And then you tell yourself, if your expectation is not met, then you tell yourself certain things. The things that people normally tell themselves is that if my expectation is not met, it's awful, I can't stand it. And then the other one is it makes me less, the self-damning belief. These things people don't realize we're doing them generally and exaggerating the way we think about circumstances, but people generally don't know that they do that, and they don't really know how unhelpful telling yourself these things is, because it just exaggerates the emotion. How much time have I got? I don't want to go on too long.
We're coming coming to the end, but yes, thank you, Ian. Um, hopefully that helps. When I'm in a good place mentally, I find it so much easier to break these unhelpful mental loops. Yeah, absolutely. And those are the times where we can catch them happening, and we can move past them, and we don't have any residual hang-ups about it. We don't feel bad about it later. I think the other important thing is about when you push past it, you understand where it comes from and you push past it, is how you feel about having pushed past it. So if you're intensifying that negative emotion and that builds up, and that was what was happening for me at the height of my burnout, was that I was just feeling really awful, and that was affecting my whole nervous system to the point that my whole body just shut down. I literally, just couldn't move a muscle. It was a
Yes,
really weird experience.
that mind and body connection.
Yes, indeed. So one final question, and is
Brilliant.
what do you suggest we can do to make manageable steps to changing lifetime limiting belief systems?
So I would say don't make the assumption that the knowledge you have is all there is that can benefit you. You have to seek more knowledge. This is what these programs are about. And if you seek more knowledge, you will get more out of life. I would never have imagined that I would be doing this work now because it was so far outside of what I was used to doing before. But I'm doing it now. So if I can do it, why couldn't somebody else do it? It's just about what the way you see yourself and what you believe about yourself. So
Yes,
yeah, seek the knowledge is the answer to that question.
thank you very much. Appreciate that, Ian. Okay, so thank you so much, everybody, for being here this evening. We are very grateful that you have given up your time to be here, to invest in your time in being here, and to be with us. And if you'd like to stay in touch, you can. There's a QR code on the screen. You can take a screenshot, a photograph, follow the QR code now, and you can leave a few details about yourself, and we will be staying in touch with you in our through our community, which means you'll get a regular newsletter from us, and there will be some tips and ideas that you can use in your life every day, but also as we grow, we're at the beginning of this journey, so we're looking to build a community that will grow and learn alongside us, and because we learn as much from you as we hope you'll be able to learn from us as we go together. If you want to contact us at all, our email contact is there as well, and Ian and I both have access to that, and you can follow us on Instagram and stay in touch there. So thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for showing up, and especially this close to Christmas. I'm sure you've all got things to final preparations to do. Thank you.
Great to meet you all.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks. Bye.
Well done.
Well done. Hang on a minute. Let me just stop sharing that. That's better. Right. There we go.